Have you noticed that two people can experience the exact same challenge but react completely different? One person sees discipline as growth, the other sees discipline as suffering. The workout feels like torture, the budget feels restrictive, the early mornings feels unfair. So, why does discipline feel like punishment to some people but freedom to others? What's going on, my curious and intellectual people? Welcome back to Intriguing Insights, where deep conversations meet everyday life, looking beyond the obvious to uncovering meaning, challenge assumption, and find wisdom in places most people overlook. I'm your host, Terrence Tyler, and today we're asking a powerful question. What if discipline is actually freedom? We often think that freedom means doing whatever you want, whenever you want. But what if real freedom comes from being able to do what matters most, even when you don't feel it? So, if we are to assume that freedom is not doing whatever I want to, whenever I want to, and that it is actually doing something that matters the most and must need to be done regardless of what I feel, we're just going to assume that for a second. So, why does discipline feel like punishment to some people? Well, because many people see discipline from the lens of immediate discomfort rather than long term development. They feel the price of what discipline costs before understanding what it creates. But if discipline is so valuable, why don't people naturally embrace it? Because undeveloped thinking focuses on what is given up today, while developed thinking focuses on what can be gained tomorrow. So the differentiation between seeing discipline as valuable and being able to embrace it or unvaluable is based off of our perspective. How do we see it? What are we focusing on? Are we focusing on what we're losing, what we're not getting, what we're not doing, what we're not experiencing, and what we're not feeling right now? Or are we focusing on the benefits, the results that we get from discipline when implemented into our lives? So, what creates the difference in perspective? Development. The more a person understands growth, the more they're able to understand that discipline wasn't designed to restrict them, but it was designed to strengthen them. Once we embrace the fact that we were created to develop, to grow, and to mature, our perspective shifts. We start seeing things that we're applying into our lives as something that's adding value to us rather than focusing on the things that is taken away from us. But many people want the rewards of discipline without the discomfort that discipline requires. They want confidence without consistency. They want success without sacrifice. They want growth without the restrictions. And as a result, every boundary feels more like something being taken away from them rather than something being built within them. So, what do I see in people that views discipline as punishment? I see they often focus on what discipline removes from their life rather than what's adding to it. They focus on the things that they can no longer do, the things they can no longer have, what made them comfortable, what made them complacent, what was familiar to them that they have become so accustomed to doing. I see that they have become attached to the routine that now they can see the sacrifice, but unfortunately, they miss out on the transformation. And what does that look like in everyday life? They see the workout and they think about the effort that they have to put in instead of the strength that they're building. They see the budget and they think about the things that they cannot spend the money on rather than the stress that they can avoid. So why do we focus on the sacrifice more than the outcome? Because the sacrifice is immediate, while the outcome is delayed. I can't stress and mention how much we have become accustomed to instant gratification. Instacart, same day delivery, social media, where convenience has structured our life to the point that patience, waiting, is almost obsolete. So when we look at development and the long-term time frame that it requires, we no longer see it attractive. So what happened when people only focuses on what's immediate? They often reject the very habits that improves their lives because they mistaken immediate discomfort for permanent loss. So what happens when people avoid discipline altogether? They usually don't become more free. They come controlled by whatever discipline was meant to manage. So what do I mean when I say that? The very thing that you did not want in your life, that discipline could have managed it from being into your life, now controls your life. For instance, if you were not trying to be unhealthy, but you didn't implement the discipline to eat healthy and stay away from the unhealthy things consistently, not altogether. Because to restrict yourself permanently, the minute that you just have one, you're going to go on a binge. But taking small incremental steps towards the direction of the goal is better beneficial because you can slowly progress towards that direction. And it avoids you being controlled by the very thing that the discipline could have helped you manage in the first place if you would have just used a small piece of it and applied it. One little area, one little discipline at a time. And that's how it grows. It don't just, hey, stone cold. You can't put a big rock on something and you can't just dump a whole tub of attribute that you don't have in your life and think that it's going. No, you don't have it. You have to grow it one small piece at a time. So you just implement it. So, for example, if you love junk food and you eat it all day, restrict yourself to just eating what a serving size that's in the back of the nutrition package, or just having one. Then go from only having 4 a week, then go to only having 2 a week. And then who knows where it go from there. But it never just happens when you cold turkey just, I'm not going to eat sweets anymore. Wait till you taste that Twinkie again. That boy tastes so good. That's a personal struggle, y'all. If you didn't able to recognize, I love junk food. And I've been one that cold turkey resist eating it. And the minute that I got that oatmeal pie, I ate the whole box. Anyways, so controlled by what exactly? Impulse, emotions, cravings, bad habits, and lack of consistency. Isn't avoiding discipline supposed to feel freeing? At first, yes. And that's exactly why it's so appealing. We have free will, but we confuse free will with freedom as if they're the same. So the freedom that we're using, our free will, to not be disciplined feels appealing, and it feels right at the moment because we are utilizing the free will not to do the very thing that we need to do in order to manage the result of what we want. If that still feels like freedom at the beginning, until what you're doing takes over and control of your life, and you're doing that consistently without even thinking about it. Your brain automatically programs. Haven't you noticed? You do it at the same time every day that you started that habit. If it was eating late a bunch of junk food around that same time that you first start eating that junk food, you immediately start craving it. What does that tell you? So what ended up happening over time? The short-term freedom becomes long-term limitations. What felt liberating eventually becomes restrictive. An undeveloped mindset sees discipline as control, like it's controlling you by being disciplined. But a developed mindset sees discipline as investment. The difference isn't discipline itself, it's the perspective. What feels like freedom today may actually be the freedom you want tomorrow. Discipline isn't designed to hurt you. It's designed to shape you. So why does discipline specifically feels like punishment to undeveloped people? They haven't yet connected present comfort with future benefit. Why is that connection so important? Because purpose changes how we interpret pain. When discomfort has meaning, it's easier to endure. So what happens when people don't see that meaning? The discomfort feels unnecessary. And how do we perceive discomfort when it feels unnecessary? As punishment. What is actually preparation gets misinterpreted as suffering. What do developed people understand about discipline that others often miss. Discipline is an investment, not a penalty. And how does this change their behavior? They're able to endure the short term discomfort because they value the long term benefit. And develop people who are disciplined, what are they really pursuing? Freedom, freedom from debt, healthy habits, emotional instability, and self sabotage. So, what role does discipline play in that? Discipline becomes the bridge from where they are to where they want to be. It's the very thing that they know that builds them to get across and be able to reach the end of the place that they want to be in life. It's like saying, I am here. I want to be there. Discipline creates the bridge to make it across. An athlete isn't being punished by training. A musician isn't being punished by practicing. What if the very thing that you're resisting is the thing that's trying to develop you? So, what if discipline isn't punishment at all? What if discipline is actually preparation? Preparation for what we say? Greater responsibility, greater opportunity, greater stability, greater freedom. And some examples of this: athletes train for performance, musicians train for mastery, and leaders train for influence. None of them view preparation as punishment. So, should we view our own discipline differently? We shouldn't. The discipline we resist may be preparing us for the life we say we want. Sometimes it's those restraints to respond off of those conditions, natural reactions to say, to do, to quit, to not do. That is the very thing that's trying to build in us what we need to endure and to build that strength to make it through the life we see in the future. That comes with observation of yourself, though. Being self-aware, at least more self-aware. You can't ultimately be self-aware because in development and growth, you're always going to learn new versions of yourself as you start to do and progress in that. But at least understanding who you are, where you are, and where you want to be today can help you recognize the things that you go through your life and avoiding them and resisting them. That is technically shaping you and preparing you and transforming you to the individual that you want to see in the future. Because what if discipline is actually freedom? Without discipline, freedom actually collapses under the weight of poor choices. I'm going to go to something that helped me understand this concept. Of course, it's the Bible. So I'm going to pull that boy up real quick. Got my old trusty phone over here. Oh, Lord. I don't know what's wrong with my phone. It's been acting weird here lately. Like, it does horrible on Wi-Fi. It's like anytime that I have the Wi-Fi hooked up or connected, it's just bad. So, bear with me for a second. we getting there. So at the beginning of creation, I see God created the man, created the woman, and he put them in the Garden of Eden. So Garden of Eden was the place of dwelling. And after he put them in the Garden of Eden, he basically laid down the ground rules. And this is where I seen both freedom and discipline, self-control being implemented. And later we see what the results look like. So to the text, he says, verse, oh, sorry. I'm in Genesis 2, chapter 2, verse 15. And we're going to read to verse 17. The Lord God took the man and placed him in the Garden of Eden. So this is the Garden of Eden where God places the man after he created him and gave him the ground rules to what he expected. Well, gave him the ground rules to what applies being here in this place. So, verse 15, the Lord God took the man and placed him in the Garden of Eden to work it and watch over it. So, first of all, he was created to work. That's the extra piece. So to say that working is not a part of life, beg to differ. God made it initially as soon as he put a man on the planet in the Garden of Eden to put to work and to watch it over it. So he posed a 10 and keep. And the Lord God commanded the man, you are free. First word, free, to eat from every tree from the garden. But, contrast, he's transitioning from the first thing he said to another thing. But you must not eat from the tree of knowledge and good and evil. For on the day you eat of it, you will certainly die. So right here we see that he has the freedom to eat everything except the tree that he commanded him not to eat from. And that was the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Of course, you can ask, okay, why that tree? Is it two trees? There's a lot of controversial things pertaining to this verse, but that's not our focus here. Our focus here is to see what freedom, or how discipline actually creates freedom. And here we see that God gave him freedom. And then he gives them instruction not to eat from a particular tree that's in the garden, which here we now understand that he has to use self-control, discipline, in order to utilize his freedom. He has all the other trees, which is crazy, except this one. But if we know the story, we know that, okay, he creates a woman for Adam, which is Eve, who is having a conversation later on in verse 3. She has a conversation with the serpent, which is interpreted as the devil, and she ends up eating from that tree that was commanded not to. The thing is, when you read the text, in the text, it says the man was with her, the one who was actually given the command. So there could have been some things there that could have transpired to be like, hey, no, don't do this, but it's not. A lot of things, women, when you speak about passivity of men, starts off with Adam at the very beginning. That's the sin nature, fall. So anyways, when this transpired, we see that because of the discipline or the lack of discipline, sin into the world, and now we're a hot mess the way that we are today. So the discipline to not eat from this tree was already automatically given to them to have the freedom to eat from all of the trees. Because what ended up happening here, they were kicked out of Eden. After God came to them and they confessed and expressed themselves, they did surely die, not physically, but they died spiritually. And because when you read this text, they say you will certainly die. And then we see that Adam and Eve lives further on. So then you have to ask yourself, okay, so what kind of death was this? So when we're speaking about death in the Bible, well, death period, it's a separation. When you die to yourself, you separate yourself from something that you were doing in order, call it sacrifice, in order to gain the other things. So it's always a separation. So we have to ask, when they're talking about death, what kind of separation is being made? When you die physically, you are separated from life here on earth and you go to your eternal place. There's a separation. So this is what we see here. And this helped me to realize that, hey, yeah, discipline creates that freedom. It gives you that freedom to be able to do what you matters the most. Not to mention, I'm naturally a disciplined person, strong will. But unfortunately, because of that, pride was rooted up in me, and I think that I can do things that I also cannot do. And I try to associate with places that it's not healthy for me. One of my greatest discipline anyway, I told y'all I was a junk food junkie, is I don't like junk food in the house. Because if I have it, I'm going to smash it. So restraint is actually one of my discipline mechanisms that I use in order to keep from around eating it and losing this physique that I work so hard for. Just saying. So this is where I learned personally from how my discipline needed to be structured according to who I was and what I wanted to gain the freedom to get the person that I want to be today and also tomorrow. How does discipline create freedom? It creates options. It creates stability. It creates self-control. Again, in the text that I just read from there, we see the options. They had all of the trees that they could have eaten, except that one. They would have implied the discipline. It would have gave them the stability that they needed to what? Stay in the promised land, which was Eden, that was given them before. Because they was not disciplined, they didn't utilize control. They lost the privilege to being able to be there because they were kicked out. So when we are disciplined, it creates freedom in us to be able to have those options, that stability, and to utilize self-control. So what kinds of freedom does this create? Financial freedom through wise spending, physical freedom through health, emotional freedom through self-regulation. So then, what is the real paradox? The thing that feels restrictive in the moment may be the very thing that creating freedom in the future. Instead of focusing on what you're losing, focus on what you're building. Every disciplined decision is a vote for the person you are becoming. Because mature people understand something that most undeveloped people often miss. Discipline feels heavy when you're carrying it, but it feels like freedom when it's carrying you. How can I stop viewing discipline as punishment? Start asking better questions. What questions? Like, what questions should I be asking? Instead of asking, what is this costing me? Start asking, what is this creating for me? And why is that question so powerful? Because it switches your attention from sacrifice to transformation. And what happens when your perspective shifts? The same discipline that once felt burdensome begins to feel purposeful. And what's one thing should I remember when discipline feels difficult? That difficult doesn't automatically mean wrong. And how can I tell the difference between punishment and preparation? Punishment focuses on paying for the past. Preparation focuses on building for the future. And which one is discipline usually doing? Preparation is shaping who you are becoming. So, what if discipline has never been the enemy? Perhaps discipline has been one of the greatest gifts given to us. Then what has been the real obstacle? Viewing discipline from the lens of immediate discomfort rather than long-term development. So what's the lesson of all this? Undeveloped people often sees discipline as what is taken from them. So how does developed people view discipline? As something that gives to them. Because discipline feels like punishment when you only see the cost. But it feels like freedom when you understand the purpose. If today you come to realize that you view discipline as unnecessary, as something that was not beneficial, as something that was taking your life away from you, and you now realize that it was the very thing that you needed in order to manage the life that you wanted for your future. Share this with somebody that feels like they need the discipline in their life. And without it, that they cannot become the person that they have. But today it helped them to realize, because of their perception of what discipline was to them, was wrong. And click that subscribe button and follow me. Join the Intriguing Insights community. Here, what we're about is the gap that's between who we settle for rather than the person that we were created to become. Remember, clarity doesn't come from easy answers, but from the courage to ask the hard ones. So stay curious, stay open, and keep looking deeper. Peace.